Good evening. Welcome to this planning committee. May I take apologies for absence?
Yes. Sorry, I'm standing in for Dan MacDonald. It's Joe Howcroft-Scott, Councillor.
Thank you. May I sign the minutes of the meeting on the 11th of January and draw your attention to page 3 of the supplementary agenda, which tells you the reasons for removal, for refusal for the land east of Rainham pumping station. With that, drawing that to your attention, can I sign those minutes? Thank you. Right, under urgent matters, I'd like to welcome Chantal Farrant-Smith. This is the first appearance at committee. I'm sure you'll all be very gentle with her, but it's nice to have you. Thank you. Declarations. Councillor Buckwell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On behalf of all Conservative Party members present on this committee, I declare... On behalf of all Conservative Party members on the committee, I declare a collective interest in relation to the application by Councillor Jane Chitty, which stands as item 10 on tonight's agenda. All Conservative group members will leave for that item. Thank you.
Councillor Hubbard.
I'd equally declare an interest in the same item. I think apart from Chris Buckle, I've known Jane since the most unpleasant mayor making in 91.
Councillor Hall-Cross-Scott.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. I was chair of the patient participation group for a decade, and Jane Chitty was on that, and so I know her, so I feel I need to leave the room. I only know her in that capacity, but I do feel that our paths have crossed in a number of ways, and I think I should leave the room.
Thank you. Right, I think that clears those matters, and that takes us then on to the first agenda item, which is, when I can get to it, the land at the fire station. Former site of fire station in Watling Street, and that's going to be Dave? Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, thank you very much. This application relates to the former fire station site that you see just here on your screen. Next to it is the new fire station site that you'll be aware of, the ambulance station to the rear. This is Watling Street along here. So some photographs, points to note here are the part of the local shopping parade along there, with two levels of flats above. Then going into that adjacent road, you will see that it goes down to two-storey along there. This is the former fire station. This is the new fire station here. And then behind you've got the ambulance station. And then that shows that retail parade just there, and going down to two-storey. And then on the opposite side of Watling Street with the two-storey properties there. So an aerial photograph which shows that the former fire station has been demolished on the site, but actually shows where the access from Star Mill Lane was into the car parking area to the rear. The proposal is for a retail, a small mini supermarket on the ground floor fronting onto Watling Street with 4 two-bed maisonettes above, car parking area to the back of that to serve with 15 spaces to serve the supermarket, then with a servicing area in just there, then access to the rear here for a car parking area serving the residential flats above the supermarket, but also these 5 three-bedroom properties which will front onto Star Mill Lane. And there will be a gate in here so that car parking area will be restricted just for resident parking. So there's 18 spaces in there serving the 9 units. So it's a floor area here. That's the small supermarket just in there. The car parking area to the rear. We feel that the 15 spaces in there are suitable, are adequate to serve a supermarket of this size. People parking in there will walk around here to the entrance into the supermarket just there. In terms of the masonettes above, there'll be a stairwell there coming up to the access to the back of the masonettes there. You can see that they're spread over 2 levels, two bedrooms, and each of them will have a small amenity area to the rear, which is common in masonettes such as this. And then as we look down Star Mill Lane, we've got a terrace of 3 properties and a pair of semi-detached, 3-bedroomed, all of them, with gardens which meet our standards in terms of amenity. In relation to design, you will have seen from the photographs that in terms of the parade on the opposite side of Star Mill Lane, which is 3-storey with retail on the ground floor, that's reflective of that with the masonettes above. And then you've got that amenity area just to the rear here, and that's where that stairwell is. So we think it fits in with the general street scene, provides a good level of amenity for prospective occupiers, and the access and car parking is suitable to serve both the commercial and the car parking for the residential meets our standards as well. All the car parking for the residential will have EV charging points, with a third of the commercial having EV charging, with the remaining 2/3 having the passive, i.e. they have the potential for EV charging in the future. Then going to the elevations of the houses, that's the elevation fronting onto Star Mill Lane. We feel that design is appropriate, 2-storey, to fit in with the street scene, and the materials, which will be controlled by condition, will ensure that it fits in design-wise. And then some street scenes. So that point I was saying in terms of the existing parade here and how you can see that crosses Star Mill, that height-wise it fits in, and then you've got the fire station here and the Camping International just down there. So it fits in with that Watling street scene, and then you can see the street scene going along Star Mill Lane, going down to the ambulance station there. We feel this is a good scheme and will provide for a valuable local facility which meets our policy guidance, and we're recommending it for approval, subject to the conditions as set out, as well as the usual bird contribution. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Members? Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, really. How will the car park be policed at the rear of the... Because, I mean, there's already car parking pressures along those streets. If you ever drive up Star Mill Lane, you will only see cars nose to tail parked outside the residents' houses. And as you pointed out in your presentation, there's lots of retail options along that high street for the people. So how will that be managed? Because I just fear that it will just come blocked with residents' car parking and won't be available for the supermarket.
Chairman, thank you. Good question. It's similar to a supermarket quite close to me down in Wainscott, actually, the Co-op down there, where it's policed by the supermarket themselves. They have signs up where they make sure they've got CCTV. They make sure that that people parking in there come in and use the supermarket. So it's policed by them. Notwithstanding that, we do have a traffic management condition, parking management condition. So they'll need to submit further details relating to that.
I have 2 councillors who've indicated, Councillor Potter and then Councillor Curry.
I think Councillor Crowther as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I welcome the scheme. I think it's a good development on the whole. I'm not sure about the convenience store element. There's already a high number of convenience stores in that area, and I'm concerned about the impact it would have on the independent traders. But that's not a material reason to turn this down. We'll just have to see how that goes. I agree with the point made by Councillor Hackwell around the policing the parking aspects. But what I'm a bit disappointed in is that we don't have much detail here on the landscape in it, and I think this could be quite harsh in terms of the landscaping and quite a concrete and cold development. It does indicate you've shown one example there with very, very minimal landscaping going on, and with some of the renderings it's showing these sort of mature trees, but those trees are fake, aren't they, because they're not actually there at the moment, and they'll take many, many years before they look like a mature tree. So I'd like to see more on the landscaping side of things. Again, not a material reason not to support this tonight, but if your officers could do some work on that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just following on from Councillor Potter's point, really, on a couple of things. I think this is a very prominent site, and it's really welcome that it's being occupied so quickly since it was since the fire station was moved, which is encouraging. But this is actually, I think the front design in particular is of obviously importance to the area. So, I mean, I mentioned it's made of the bricks and stuff that's going to be used in the development, but I think special attention needs to be looked at what sort of, I mean, will it be a curved frontage on the corner of the road there where it turns into the side road? Will that have a curved frontage to it? It's going to be, because I think that would mirror what's on the other side of the road as well, I think, and that kind of thing. So I think perhaps a bit more care on the design would have been helpful. And as Councillor Potter was, I hope there's possibly there's room on the front there with quite a wide pavement for some street trees to go in as well, which would actually soften the whole impact of the building. So it's just a couple of points on the design of the building from that point of view. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Crowson.
Sorry. There are two iconic looking buildings. What used to be the old, I think it was a bowling alley, and then on the east of the site there's the 1950s set of flats and shops along there. It doesn't echo that at all, and it begs the question: is there a policy about architecture generally in a street scene? Because what's being proposed isn't in keeping with the street scene. Certainly, it's in keeping with the fire station next door, but that's added. So, you know, I would have liked to have seen, the iconic buildings recognised for what they are, and the street scene around it to mirror that.
Chairman, I understand the point that Councillor Crozer is saying. We do feel that the design is appropriate for the area, and consideration has been given to height, scale. There are conditions regarding materials, and we feel that this will fit in with the street scene. If you'd seen the photographs I showed further down here, the fire station specifically designed to stand out on its own merits. It's not a conservation area though, so there's nothing that we need to replicate there. But I do feel it in terms of scale, materials, and design. It's fine in the area. Thank you.
I haven't got anybody else that's indicated. Can I just raise the issue? On page 34, it talks about the noise assessment and the delivery noise assessment. What I can't find in the conditions is that there are any hours of operation for the retail use. Now, the only way that you can control the noise from parking is to control the hours that they... Is it? Now, I've gone all through there, and you're going to tell me it's there. All right, okay. Okay, missed it. Yep, okay. So I don't have anybody else. Are we ready to move to the Vice Chairman? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Colleagues, so agenda item 5, the former Medway fire station site, I move as set out in the officer's report that we approve this application subject to A, that is the Section 106 agreement under the 1990 Act, and B, conditions, fairly lengthy and numerous conditions, numbered 1 to 29, so moved.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Thorne. Those in favour?
That's 13, Chairman.
Are we 13?
We are 14. Got one less.
Oh, right, those to the contrary. Did you? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Agenda item 6, land at Purville, 221 Lordswood Lane. Yeah. Carly.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the demolition of existing dwelling and associated buildings and for the erection of 20 dwellings, access, parking, play provisions and landscaping. This is the site here, outlined in red, and you can see it's within a residential area. So in terms of the principle of residential development on that site, it's considered acceptable. Oh. This is the aerial photograph of the site, so just outlined in red, so you can see the extent of it. It's currently occupied by just one dwelling house. This is North Dane Way running along here, Setford Road here, and then Lordswood Lane and Swift Crescent there. And just some photos to orientate yourself. So this is looking at an existing access to the existing property. This is Swift Crescent and this is Lordswood Lane here. And then this is on the footpath looking at that access shown there. So we're looking along Swift Crescent, and then this is the driveway up to that existing house. And then this is Lordswood Lane street scene, so we're looking towards the site. This is the site in this area here, and you can see the properties on Lordswood Lane are set back. You can see some land level changes there, garages to the front of these dwellings. Oh, it's quite sensitive, sorry. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Let me just find myself, there we go. So this is Swift Crescent street scene. You can see 3-storey dwellings here, so a block of flats. But what you might notice is obviously this ground floor is lower than the highway, so that's opposite the application site. And then this is the site adjacent at 217 with driveway up and property there. And then this is within the site, so looking from the driveway up to the front elevation of the house, and then looking back to the tree line boundary on Lordswood Lane. And then this is taken from the rear of the site, so you can see the extent of curtilage to that property. So this is taken from Vixen Close. And then just in the street scene of Setford Road, so this is Vixen Close, a very small close. This is where the access would be going into the back of the site. And then another couple of pictures just showing Setford Road. So this is Vixen Close here, just off to the left, and then looking back towards Setford Road street scene, and then standing looking across to Vixen Close there. And then we move on to the plans where you can see the extent of the curtilage quite large, so the existing dwelling house there, and this is what it currently looks like, the floor plans and elevations. So it's actually quite hidden from the street scene. And then this is just to give you an idea of where the starting point was when the application came in initially for this site. Was a different application. We started with 39 units, so 2 blocks of flats here, and then some dwelling houses to the rear access from Vixen Close, and these ones to be accessed from Swift Crescent, and then negotiated down to 24 units is what they came in with to try and address our concerns, but again, still wasn't happy with that, and this application got withdrawn. This shows no flats on it, so these are all dwelling houses. There'll be a comparison slide coming up, and then this is the current plan. So this is the access coming in from Vixen Close, dwelling houses to the rear, all 2-storey off this side. You've got a pedestrian foot link through here, and then properties to the front, semi-detached, 2 pairs, and these are part 3-storey, part 2-storey. Because of the land level, it's 3-storey at the front and 2-storey to the rear. But just so it's easier to compare, you can see all 3 side by side with the issues. So this one we had big concerns with the number of flats and the dominance of parking just overall in this layout, and there wasn't enough landscaping. We just felt there was far too many units on this site. Then trying to address those concerns we've raised, they removed the flats, but the car parking became even more dominant, not enough landscaping, so even less than before. We still felt there was too many units, and then this relationship here with these properties to this one was too close in our opinion. This is someone's back garden here. So again, those concerns were expressed, and then we've ended up with this scheme, which we're happy with, and no flats to the front, all dwelling houses across the site, as previously said. The landscaping's integrated with the parking, so it's less dominant, and there's a better relationship with neighbouring properties in terms of the layout. All of those rear gardens meet the depths for Medway housing standards. And then we look here, this is the building heights. That's been raised as an issue in terms of consultation responses. All the pink ones are 2-storey, and as mentioned, these are split level, 3-storey to the front and 2-storey to the rear. And then both set off of the boundary, like this significantly set off the boundary here, but more in line with this one, so that it isn't dominating that neighbouring property there. Overall, we don't have any concerns as officers with the layout of the proposal. And then this shows a section of the site. So you can see, I don't know if you can see from there, but there's a red line here, which is the existing site levels. My hand, I can't keep it, it's too sensitive, so it's going like, but yeah, if you can see the red line and then the proposed levels, there isn't a significant difference across the site in the main. The significant difference is down here, but what is happening there is it's at a lower level than the existing line, which is up here. And then we move to the elevations. So there's a blue dot on each of these to indicate this is what the elevations and the floor plans look like for these properties, plots 1, 2, 5 and 12, 4-bedroom detached houses. And then, I won't read all those, you can read them yourself, but these are for the next group, which are 3-bed semi-detached houses. And then plots 8 and 9 are 3-bed semi-detached houses. That's those two there as you come into the entrance. And then the ones at the front, access from Swift Crescent, is the split level 3-storey, 2-storey, 4-bed semi-detached houses. In terms of the design, it's quite varied in the street scene along Lordswood Lane, Swift Crescent and Setford Road. So there's no objection from the officer's point of view in terms of the housing type and the architecture, the design, the architecture, and they all meet the national space standards. And then in terms of landscaping, the layout has meant that we've been able to retain trees on site, particularly along these boundaries here, and then the vegetation along the front there, so that the parking isn't the main dominant feature. And then this is the proposed landscape management areas. There are conditions to require further landscape detail because we want to include more ecological mitigation measures. So if you've read the report, there is a loss in terms of the biodiversity net gain calculation, but there are street trees included, and we would be looking for native species in terms of the landscape. KCC have asked for that to be included in the detail that comes in, required as part of the condition, and there's also a landscape management condition, and then these areas are to be managed by a management company, so it secures the street trees that the officers managed to secure that would sit between the parking and the outside of the curtilage of the residents' properties. And yes, in terms of just balancing the loss of in terms of the biodiversity net gain calculation, we have to balance that against the 5-year land supply issue that the council has, and that carries significant weight. So taking account of that, the climate change measures and the landscape details to be secured by condition, and that the street trees would be managed separately, so secured in the long term rather than being within the curtilage of individual owners. We are recommending approval, and that's subject to the completion of the Section 106 as set out in the report and the conditions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Right, I have Councillor Lamas.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very well aware of the over 30 objections that the Planning Committee has received in relation to this site. One of the reasons why I haven't spoke about it publicly at all before is because I wanted to reserve my opinion for this committee, and also you will be aware, Chairman, that in this committee we have a role that is quasi-judicial, and we have to consider applications based on a set criteria. So it's not just the case that I can just vote against things in my backyard, so to speak. As a fellow resident of 288 Lordswood Lane, this is a site I know extremely well in Princes Park. I'd like to ask some questions, if I may, to Dave Harris, the head of planning, just to get his assurance on some of the things that residents have raised. And then I'd like to have a brief discussion about Section 106 funding, if that's okay with you, Chair. Thank you. The first one is that the trees are crucial for this site to be viable in terms of not overly impacting the street scene. What assurances can you give that the trees, particularly running along the Swift Crescent Road, will be maintained and along that southern boundary so that the look of the site won't necessarily overwhelmingly change?
Are you happy for me to answer?
Yeah.
Well, the condition, I'm not sure which number it is without looking, but there's a landscape condition on number 14, which requires the management details to be submitted to us for agreement.
Perfect, thank you. The use of bricks. Obviously, the street scene varies considerably in Princes Park, especially along that road. But are you assured that the use of bricks and the looks of the building will be in keeping with the area?
Yes.
The management of the site grounds. In the application, there are some management areas of the site grounds that will be the responsibility of the developer post-completion, except for some areas which were shaded on a certain map that I looked at. Could you please clarify what is meant by that?
That's the plan up there showing the areas to be managed. They're all areas that are outside of the curtilage of owners, separate owners of the individual houses, so that's their curtilage and that's for them to manage themselves. We obviously can't impose our sort of landscape design on people's individual gardens, and then just the smaller grey shaded areas are footpaths or roads.
Thank you. The residents of Vixen Close will be probably more concerned about this application than those of Swift Crescent, because that's almost like a close-knit community there, and this would be a significant change for them to interpret. However, you'll be aware, Chairman, of Section 106 funding, which is essentially money that the developer gives upon the completion of the project in order to improve the local community, to mitigate against the effects they may have. And that's where my main concerns lie with this application. Princes Park needs more bins, more trees. And we also have an issue, two local issues that need funding. So I'd like to ask what measures can be taken in the Section 106 funding to perhaps give less money to far-flung places such as the Great Heritage Park and things there, and more emphasis on two local issues. The first one is the Kingfisher Playground, which is in the valley of Kingfisher, next to Kingfisher Drive, and the second one is the Kingfisher Underpass. These are two very local, very nearby things, local projects that need funding for. Could these be a community benefit alongside more trees, more bins, that the residents, alongside money for additional school places and healthcare access, could come as a result of this development if it was approved by this committee?
Chairman, if I can answer that, discuss this with Carly, but also with the Fiona Ledley, who's the Green Spaces officer. In terms of little one there, A1, which is a green space contribution, £54,500 going to open spaces with Princes Park Ward, that could potentially go towards that open space area that Councillor Lamas refers to. What we could do, if members are in agreement with that, is that for that contribution to be discussed with the ward councillors, which would include Councillor Lamas. Members, in terms of Great Lines Heritage Park, that is 5% of the overall green space services, and is a reflection that the Great Lines Heritage Park is a Medway-wide benefit. As you know, that used to be a contribution sought on its own, but following concerns raised by members of this committee, it then became part of the Open Spaces Green contribution, no more than 5% of that. In relation to the public realm, possibility for members on this, you will see that there is under little 9, £4,900 towards public realm improvements at Chatham Town Centre. That's again because that's the main centre serving Medway and is in need of some public realm improvements. Members, if they feel appropriate, could change that towards public realm improvements in the vicinity of the site, which would cover the issues in terms of tree planting, the wider area and bins that Councillor Lammas referred to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And again, sorry, as Carly's quite rightly pointed out, again in consultation with ward councillors.
The final concern I'd like to raise, Chair, is the junction of Swift Crescent and Lordswood Lane, which I think you had a picture on one of your slides in the presentation. There is money put aside in Section 106 to look at the vicinity of the pathway access and also road configuration, as I understand it in this application. There's a pre-existing issue there whereby that's the angle of that slope is extremely steep, and in person is a lot steeper than that image actually gives representation to, particularly on the left-hand side as you're coming towards us. You go very, very far downhill. Now, 95% of traffic continues along that road in a straight line. And in winter, there is a serious problem with cars sliding down that hill and smashing into parked cars. Now, bearing in mind that the access site for this supposed development, should members want to approve, is very nearby, might it be the case that if members were minded to approve, that that issue could be looked at as well as?
Through you, Chair, what we can ask for is to put some anti-skid surfacing at the junction to stop cars from actually sliding through into the to the other road. As part of the Section 106. Because, as you say, I think the concern is vehicles coming down, they're actually just driving straight through because they can't physically stop. Is that the issue?
No, the issue is the fact that they have to go almost down the hill as if they're turning in Swift Crescent to then come back up the hill to complete that straight line journey. What we need is a straight line there so that there's less emphasis on people going down the hill, so that that flow of traffic makes natural sense. But is this something that could be discussed at a later date?
Oh, indeed, yes.
In that case, Chair, what my view would be is that even though we've gone from flats to houses, 39 units to 20 units, I'm still quite concerned about that safety issue. So I would actually be voting against this as a committee member tonight. However, if council members were minded to approve the scheme, bearing in mind the restraints on council land supply and housing issues that we have in Medway, I would be very grateful if members could add on the conditions of a review of the Section 106 money in line with what the head of planning, Dave Harris, suggested in consultation with the ward councillors, so that if the scheme does go ahead against the wishes of my residents, at least the money for improvements is felt locally rather than regionally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lammas. Do I have other members who wish to speak? Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and the proposals that are here. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points, following a little bit on from what Councillor Lammas was talking about in relation to the landscaping and such like. I was very concerned to see that Kent Biodiversity were not in favour of this because of the biodiversity net gain not being achieved within this development. I mean, I think it's page 55 where they say that. And I'm not quite sure I understand why tweaking the design of the site so that the net gain is achieved compromises our land supply issues in terms of housing. I'm trying to get my head around the connection between those two issues, because providing sufficient biodiversity on the site doesn't stop the site from being developed. It just means that the design of the site isn't quite right yet. However, I must say I'm encouraged by the idea that the money that's proposed for Chatham Town Centre, the 4,900, could actually be used within the community in consultation with ward councillors, and that money could then go towards the offset of the net gain issue that's a problem with if there's more tree planting within the local area and such like. So that's encouraging. on that one. So I'd just like to know a little bit more about that. And then the other issue is around in the final part of the report on climate change. There's references made to the proposal that air source heat pumps be there, but I can't see it as a condition. So I just wondered if there was any opportunity to say, actually, in this case, these could be air source heat pumped properties. It's looked at already, so let's make it so, put it as a condition in the development. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Carly, could you respond?
Yep, just in terms of the BNG and the housing land supply issue, we've balanced that as officers. Members can obviously choose to balance it another way. But if you feel that the public realm money being changed from Chatham to the local area and the street trees provided might be sufficient to address that, then that's for you to balance and weigh up. In terms of the air source heat pumps, that's covered by the climate change condition 18, where they basically submitted a statement to set out their climate change measures, and then that requires them to implement those and then submit a verification report to us to say that they've done it and demonstrate that they have.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's been a very strong evolution with this development from the 39 units to the 20 units we see today with the layout and the landscaping. But we have lost the open space that was proposed with the 39 units. And bearing in mind these issues around the biodiversity net gain, and in order to provide that in this development, it states in the report that the habitats would be within the curtilage of properties. Surely if the scheme was reduced by only a small amount, you could then achieve that habitat within a public open space that isn't currently there at the moment because there's 2 dwellings there, for example. Is that something that's been considered?
In terms of, it's a bit of a difficult one because, yes, that has you're referring to that, isn't it, that we've lost. But on the, actually it might be easier to find that scheme. So the current one, there is more usable space here, which is where the play space was, and we've gained space here. So whilst we might have lost that, and it seems that, that we've lost more because we've lost that, there's actually more car parking dominance here, and we've integrated more landscaping. And as I understand it, and Councillor Curry will probably understand more than I do, in terms of BNG linear form, there's an increase, but it's the polygon version that there's a decrease. I'm not sure how that sort of balances out. But yes,
could that then be achieved then if you reduce the scheme by a couple of dwellings?
Quite possibly. I don't know. That would have to be looked at.
It wouldn't be you, it would be the developer would do
that. Whether that makes that scheme unviable or not, I don't know. So that would also potentially come into play. And if that's the case, then we'd have to get a financial appraisal from them and get them to demonstrate that. But that may be the case. But that's down to members to decide whether they're happy with this scheme or they want to look at further iterations, if the applicant's willing to.
Chairman, if I can just add to that, and Carly's put it very, very well. And this is a really good plan. You can see that the 20 units one, with the additional tree planting that's achieved there over the 39 units, the BNG must be greater for the current scheme. There may be potential for some additional gains in the public realm area, which I say public realm area, the area that will be managed by the management company. So we can look at that. But what I would say is that the requirement for 10% biodiversity net gain isn't in force yet. So that weakens that argument. I think Councillor Curry's made a very good point about, and Councillor Lammas as well, in terms of taking that public realm contribution and using it for additional tree planting in the immediate area, which will help that BNG point of view. Moving forward, just to let members know in terms of the future, as we get towards the requirement come November for 10% gain, we're working very hard with KCC Ecology. We are, along with other Kent authorities, are paying for a BNG officer who's now in post, just started a week or so ago. I will be meeting them shortly to talk about not only on-site BNG and how we can best deal with that, but also where there are sites where you can't achieve 10%, at least 10% BNG on-site, where we'll be able to look to get off-site provision to offset that. Hope that's helpful, Chairman.
Chair, could I just quickly come back and if we just, with reference to this specific site tonight, have we had those conversations with the developer to say, well, actually, you're very close to meeting the net gain requirement with the biodiversity, and actually, if you just came back with a slightly different proposal, you would be there on that? And do we know if they would be willing to do that?
I don't know if the officers specifically had that specific conversation, but obviously conversations have gone along the time in terms of the amount of landscaping that they have produced, and the difficulty we do have is what Dave has said, is that the Environment Act doesn't come into force until November 2023, so we can't make them do it at this stage, and they've gone so far as to provide a scheme that we as officers are happy with. So we think the balance is right, and then it's up to you to see whether you agree with that, and by redirecting the public realm money to provide street trees and making sure that they're the right species and the right type in the right area, they, as I understand it from our tree officer, are quite a good source for biodiversity net gain, and that may tip the balance.
Right, okay. Just on a separate matter, and it's just an anomaly with the address, which wouldn't surprise me if Councillor Buckwell's also picked up on this. The actual access to the site, as far as I can see, is from Swift Crescent, but the address is 221 Lordswood Lane, and then the neighbouring property, which is 217 Lordswood Lane, is actually listed on the council system as 35 Swift Crescent. So I presume it's because, and I think Councillor Lammas suggested this earlier, that the whole road used to be Lordswood Lane, and then it became Swift Crescent when they built Princess Park, and there's a bit of an anomaly there, and perhaps some people trying to keep a different address, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hubbard.
Thank you. So my issue and concern is actually just looking at the nature of the road network in the area. So I noticed in the highways there is a transport statement talking about the suitability of the site coming off Stratford Road and Vixen. But to get to that point, there is a number of convoluted little roads with sharp junctions, increasing the amount of traffic trying to, in the end, going back to Lordswood Lane. I just wanted to know if any assessment had been taken upon the additional traffic load, not at the Vixen Close Stratford Road junction, but further down towards the various junctions, Stanley Road, etc., and Archer Road, down to Lordswood. What view had been taken about the transport assessment?
Through you, Chair, the actual applicant submitted their transport assessment, and they've actually looked at all the roads along there. They've also looked at the pedestrian cycle facilities, and what they concluded was, I believe it was 11 to 12 additional increase in vehicular traffic, and they said that the roads can actually support that, to be honest. And they had no concerns about the configuration of the local highway network. Okay.
I don't have anybody else.
So
Sorry.
So was that our assessment or just the applicant's assessment?
Yes, it was an access assessment, yeah, as well as the quality of the highway as well. Yeah.
So we haven't done one.
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Lammas there. That certainly, when I visited the site early last week, the junction with Lordswood Lane is particularly dangerous there. It's slippery when it's icy, and obviously when it's in the cold mornings. Is the amount of traffic that's coming out of that kind of Lordswood Lane exit, is that increasing from where it is now? Or is that, does that look as if there isn't, that, you know, all of the residents on there can access through the drive to the west, presumably? To the east, sorry.
It's split, isn't it?
Yeah, it's split. You've got 2 pairs of semi-detached properties here that would be coming out onto Lordswood Lane, and all of these properties would be coming out through Vixen Close. This is a pedestrian link, so you can't drive all the way through from one access to the other.
On a point of clarity, Chair, if I may, I think what Councillor Crozier is suggesting, which is correct, is that everyone who comes out of the access to Vixen Way will have to drive around in a crescent moon shape, and to get to Morrison's they'll have to go right to that junction. So whichever way they're coming out of that, which is why my concerns are over that slippery part, they will all encounter that on their way to Morrison's.
Yeah, that wasn't my assumption, but I do take that point. But it's just that, I mean, do highways consider the safety of that junction? Because it's a slippery junction.
I think if there's a concern about slip, I think I mentioned about putting some anti-skid surface in that junction there. But looking at it, I looked at it and I didn't think there's any defects in the road. But if we're concerned about slips and things like that, I think anti-skid surfacing, which we can use as Section 106 contribution to actually improve the physical characteristics of the road. Thank you.
Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Chair. I have a very good friend who lives just a few numbers up from there, so I do use that junction a lot. And actually, I think Swift Crescent is 10 times worse because the hill's a lot larger. I think it's a small, tiny little bit depression. I actually think the road network there, it's built in a big valley. All the roads are very steep. I don't think there's a particular concern. I accept your concern about at the end of that road, but all the roads around there are very steep, and in snow and ice, there are lots of accidents because people drive too fast, normally.
I don't have anybody else who's indicated. Just to comment on, I think the fact that we have the comparison chart up in front of us is very significant, because if you look at what it started at and what it has now transpired, that the applications come in, is really quite different. It is much, much greener, and I'm not always sure that open spaces do add that much to biodiversity. Sometimes they become scruffy, and whereas there looks to be a plan here to maintain these trees because they're going to be under a management company. So I think that from what it started to what is now before us is a significant improvement. I'm going to move to the Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Colleagues, I take account of the debate, which I think has been very helpful, particularly concerns on the 106 and the sensible need, I think, for some more attention to highway and safety issues. So I will move the recommendation, but with some amendment, which may hopefully incorporate the views reflected by members in the debate. So I move recommendations subject to the Section 108, which is before us, but with the following, Section 106, but with the following amendment to Roman numeral 9, which relates to the public realm improvements. I would amend that to read that they be devoted to areas in the vicinity of the application site, including the potential of the use of anti-skid surfacing on the highway and incorporating measures to enhance the general safety of the locality. In addition, on that point, Madam Chairman, colleagues, because it was made earlier and rightly so, that the detail of that be subject to professional views and consultation of elected members. And finally, to make it clear, as we're coming into that dreaded run-up to the 4th of May, that if there has not been an agreement concluded, then the relevant ward members be the 2 new members for Princes Park if there is no agreement by Tuesday the 9th of May. So based on that, we then have additional conditions set out, which are at Section B at 1 to 26. So in summary, Move approval subject to an amended 106 as to subparagraph Roman numerals 9 and to section B, which are conditions 1 to 26. So moved.
Just need, before we put that to the vote.
Chairman, I thank Councillor Buckwell and the Vice Chairman for that. Could I just add to that, if that's okay, Councillor Buckwell, that in terms of recommendation A1, the green space contribution, that ward councillors are involved in that. Your point in terms of 9 was right, the 4,900 towards public realm improvements in the vicinity of the site. But where we get to the anti-skid, etc., I think that better relates to 10, which is a highway contributions to improve and aid pedestrian movements within the vicinity. So the highway improvements come out of 10, but the public realm improvements out of 9.
Okay, if I may, Madam Chairman, with your leave, I'll amend my proposal to reflect the comments that Mr. Harris has just added.
Thank you. Seconded? Thank you. Those in favour?
That's 12, Chairman.
Those to the contrary?
That's 2, Chairman.
Thank you. The application for the land in Lordswood Lane is approved. That takes us then to 42 Main Road, Who. And in this case, Councillor Sands would like to address you as the ward councillor in due course. Do you agree? Okay. Councillor Sands, would you like to come forward? And I think this is going to be Chantal.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to draw members' attention to the supplementary sheet where you'll see an objection from Who Parish Council has been received and a further letter from Councillor Pearce has also been received. Their reasons for objections are listed on pages 3 and 4 of the supplementary agenda. This application is a resubmission of a previously refused application which was determined at committee. The previous application was for a 3-bedroom chalet bungalow, and the reason for refusal related to the height, scale and massing of the proposed dwelling, together with its relationship with 42 Main Road. These are the previous refused scheme, so that just demonstrates the elevations. And these are the floor plans. So this is the site location plan. The proposal site is a corner plot between Main Road and Coombe Road and presently forms part of the residential garden of 42 Main Road. So these are just some photographs of the area. This is the view from the west, looking down towards the proposal site. So this is 42 Main Road here. This is from the east of the site. Again, you can see 42 Main Road here. You can't really see the proposal site from this side, but just looking to see the comparison in terms of the sizes of the dwellings within the area. This is the site location within this corner plot here, and this is views up towards Coombe Road. So within these photos you can see sort of the relationship between the bungalows within Coombe Road and then the 2-storey elements along Main Road. And then these are just some photographs from inside the site. So again, that's 42 Main Road, and this is the corner junction here looking out towards Main Road and Coombe Road here. So going on to the site layout, this is the existing site layout demonstrating the garden area for 42 Main Road. This is the proposed site layout demonstrating the ground floor, the garden area and the parking provisions within the garage and to the front of the garage there. And this is the access that leads out onto Coombe Road. Going on to the proposed floor plans. The ground floor would comprise of 1 bedroom here, a shower room, open plan kitchen, living and dining space. The first floor will comprise of a master bedroom with ensuite and a study on this side. In terms of windows and overlooking, these windows have been conditioned to be obscure glaze to mitigate any overlooking into 42 Main Road. And this main window here that serves the master bedroom would overlook the proposed garden of the proposed dwelling. So here are the elevations when viewed from main roads. This is 42 Main Road here. These lines helpfully demonstrate the previously refused application. This was a second amendment, which was then further reduced to what you see here. This is the view from Coombe Road towards the site. And these are further elevations, the northern elevation and the eastern elevation, again demonstrating the previously refused elevations there. And lastly, these are the street scenes. So again, this is 42 Main Road, so just showing it with the boundary treatment and sort of the landscaping that's proposed there. And again, from Coombe Road, demonstrating the relationship between the bungalows there, again, with the boundary treatment and the landscaping. Just on to sort of concerns that were raised through letters of objection. Previously stated, the supplementary agenda details the objections from the Parish Council and Councillor Pearce. One of the issues was over-development of the site. There have been 2 previous approvals on this site under outline applications for proposed bungalows. When looking at the buildings within the plots, especially within the street scene, the proposed site arrangement is comparable to those on the adjacent side of the road. So if I just flick back to the site location plan. And the proposed chalet bungalow would be set back from both Main Road and Coombe Road, and it wouldn't appear cramped within the plot. As such, it's not considered that the provision of a 2-bedroom chalet bungalow would constitute overdevelopment of the site. Another main issue that was raised was the relationship with 42 Main Road. It's been listed within the objection that it's a non-designated heritage site. The conservation specialist didn't comment on this planning application, but they did provide comments for the previous application, in which they determined that it was not a non-designated heritage site, and as such there was no requirement for a heritage assessment to be submitted with this application. So there was no objection raised in terms of heritage grounds. Just do a check. So as a result, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sands, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the committee for allowing me to speak. This application is in a very small corner plot on the junction of Main Road and Coombe Road. And you've heard that it's already been in reviews twice. It is my opinion, and the opinion of the Parish Council, that is still an overdevelopment of the site and potentially a backland development. 42 Main Road is a historic building in the context of Who Village. The garden forms part of the character and the appearance of that historic building and the entrance to our village centre. This proposal will be out of keeping with the wider area. I agree with previous planning officer's reason for refusal and the proposed development on design and height. Although it's been changed, in my opinion, it's still unacceptable. The immediate character of the area would be negatively affected by the adjoining dwelling of 42 Main Road. This development, I believe, as such fails to provide improvement to the character and the appearance of the street scene, which is contrary to BNE1 of the Medway Local Plan 2003. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Councillor Buckwell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you to Councillor Sands. Thanks to Chantelle for her first in-person appearance at committee. Thank you very much. We've read your reports before. Thank you. Madam Chairman, I opposed this last time, and having heard carefully the officers' respective view, my views are not changed. I think that this is, in a sense, and in principle, decision that we take this evening. The committee was split last time. That's healthy, not a problem at all. But essentially, this site is at the end of Coombe Road, which is dominated by bungalows. I must say, the term chalet bungalow in itself is an absurdity. It's either a bungalow or it isn't. And it isn't a bungalow, so we need to be clear about that, as certain representations have said. Madam Chairman, I think it's only fair that I inform other members that, although I will of course move the recommendation, if that fails, I will then move an alternative recommendation, which, having sought some advice from officers, would be to put again the exact wording that I proposed ultimately, or that we agreed ultimately, last time, being the refusal reasons from May of last year, and I believe that those would still be sustainable on appeal should it come to it. So I don't change my view from the previous discussion some 9 months ago. The height of the building has been lowered. Yes, it has. Technically, it has. I don't think, however, that makes a significant, constitutes a significant reason, in my view, certainly for me changing my view on it. It's not a bungalow. I appreciate its address will be Main Road probably and not Coombe Road, but the dominance of the adjoining road to which it is at the entrance is a bungalow development. And so I will not be supporting the recommendation, but ironically, I will of course be moving it for members to make their own decisions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Hubbard.
Thank you. I concur with Councillor Buckle. I've just been looking up the reasons for refusal last time around, the decision notice given, which was the result of the committee made determination. And I don't think the issues have been addressed. I know we've had a pretty drawing that shows out with, I think, purple, isn't it? That one there. But it's actually more contrived than it was before. And as you say, it's not a bungalow. It's something more than a bungalow. So I will be happy to support the wording if it is similar to the previous refusal.
Councillor Potter.
Well, members will be aware that I've spoken on a number of occasions about sort of these incremental approaches to getting planning permission or for applicants to get what they want, basically. So where they would put in a permission for a self-build, and then the concern being that what comes along is just a standard estate. They get permission for something small, establish the principle of development, and then come along with something bigger, which is the case here. It's not a proper bungalow. It is just a smaller version of the house, in my view. So I will stick to my guns. I've refused it on the last committee. I will refuse it again tonight.
Councillor Croser.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Ron, for your presentation. Madam Chairman, at 42 Main Road is the ostensible entrance to the old part of Who. It forms the character of Who, and I think to put something in front of it would be very, very detrimental to the street scene. And I'm surprised that a character assessment or a heritage assessment has not been carried out, or doesn't seem to be carried out. Certainly no pictures of what the street scene is. That's one point, Madam Chairman. My second point is perhaps maybe a point of order, but I noticed that, as you know, the Who Peninsula is, or Medway has many special protection areas in its boundary, and the peninsula, my ward, is host to, I think, most of them. The contribution to the SAMS project and the mitigation for damage to those sites is very, very dear to my heart. And I noticed that on all of the applications, most of the applications in Medway, there is that contribution to that SAMS project. And there is a sentence at the end of the description of that under bird mitigation, and in this application is on page 77, where it says there's a decision from the Court of the European Justice that there should be some assessment made of the damage. And it says at the end of the paragraph, or indeed it says there is a need for an appropriate assessment to be carried out as part of this application, and that this is included as a separate assessment form. Can you clarify whether I should be seeing that assessment within this pack, or whether it is something that is given to the applicant that he fills in and is given to planning that we don't see?
Chairman, thank you very much. I'll ask Chantal to just comment on one thing, whether we received a payment for it, which I think we have. Yeah, so the SAMS payment has been made for this in accordance with the adopted practice. What the adopted practice is with working with Natural England is that with the appropriate assessment, which builds in the contribution, which mitigates the impact of additional people going down to the SPAs and potential damage there, they feel that that's a mitigation. So what happens with these all these applications is an appropriate assessment is done by officers based on that contribution being paid. That is then sent to Natural England, who sign and say that that's satisfactory. So that will be on file.
Is that available to us? Can we see that?
Yes, you will be able to see it on applications. If the application is approved, we can give you a copy of that. If it's not approved, then it's not necessary.
Would it form, if you went online to look at the documents, would it form part of those documents? No. Okay. I think it will come to you directly.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I think it will come to you directly. Okay. I don't have anybody else who has indicated, so I will move to the Vice Chairman to move the recommendation on the order paper.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do so for the democratic process. That is a recommendation of approval, subject to conditions 1 to 10 as set out. Thank you. So moved.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Those in favour of that proposal?
That's 7, Chairman.
Those to the contrary?
That's 8, Chairman.
So that proposal falls. I move to the Vice Chairman to make a counter proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, forgive me because you don't have this wording in front of you, and it's important that you're aware of the detailed reasoning that was before us in May last year. So I now recommend in the alternative the refusal of this application for the following reason. And I will pass the wording on to Judy. So the reason being, the proposed development, by reason of its design, scale, mass and height, would result in an unacceptable form of development which fails to respect the immediate character of the area whilst negatively competing with the adjoining dwelling at 42 Main Road. The development as such fails to provide a positive improvement to the character and appearance of the street scene, contrary to policies H4 and BNE1 of the Medway Local Plan 2003 and to paragraphs 126 and 130 of the NPPF. Madam Chairman, so moved.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Those in favour of that motion?
That's 7, Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
Would you please indicate again?
This is 4.
This is for refusal.
Sorry.
This is for the refusal.
Can I it was a point of order here because I'm new to the game here. I'm not quite sure what I'm voting for.
For the refusal.
Perhaps you could give a little bit more explanation.
Okay. Madam Chairman, if I may, my recommendation to approve was rejected.
Yeah.
We have to therefore have some resolution.
Yeah.
So in the alternative, I am now proposing to refuse the application. And that was the wording that would constitute the refusal reasoning if members support refusal.
Thank you.
Those in favour of that motion?
That's 8, Chairman.
Those to the contrary?
That's 6, Chairman.
The application for Coombe Road is refused. That takes us then to agenda item 8, which is 254 Maidstone Road, and is Chantal again.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is a resubmission of a previously refused application determined under delegated powers. The previous refusal reasons were the impact on occupant amenity due to inadequate outlook and the lack of justification of the potential harm caused to trees within the grass verge. This is the site. This is at Maidstone Road. This is 254 Maidstone Road here, and this is Coombe Road where the proposal will be accessed from. You can see from the aerial image the relationship between the dwellings on the two roads and how the existing plots have been subdivided. What did I say? Coombe Road? Yeah. Apologies. Camellia Close. So these are photos from inside Camellia Close. So this is the proposal site within here. These are existing dwellings that face onto Camellia Close. Again, this is where the proposal site would be here. Just going down to some more photos. So these are photos from within the site on 254 Maidstone Road, looking out towards Camellia Close, again towards the properties that are already there. And this is an image looking in towards 254 Maidstone Road, which is down the bottom there. Yep. So this is the block plan demonstrating the site layout, including the parking provisions to the front. And it also, again, demonstrates the relationship with the neighbouring properties on Camellia Close and the distances between those properties and the ones that front onto Maidstone Road. Going towards the elevations, the design and scale of the proposed dwelling mirrors that of the neighbouring property of 16 Camellia Close, with the bedrooms within the first floor facilitated by the dormer windows there. Just moving down to the floor plans. So garage parking space there, lounge dining area with the kitchen there at ground floor, and then within the roof space there are 3 bedrooms and the family bathroom. The proposed development meets with technical housing standards, so there's no concerns in terms of occupant amenity with this application. Concerns have been raised in terms of overlooking and impact on neighbouring privacy. The proposed dwelling would be approximately 27 metres from the dwellings on Maidstone Road, and in terms of neighbouring amenity of 16 Camellia Close, it would only be this window here that serves bedroom 3 that would result in any overlooking. But considering that it is a residential area at present, it's unlikely that overlooking from that window alone would cause detrimental harm to neighbouring amenity. And there's also mutual overlooking from numbers 14 and 16 into the neighbouring properties as well. Just moving down to the street scene, so you can see the relationship with 16 Camellia Close there. So going on to issues that are raised through letters received. Objections were raised in terms of parking standards and whether the proposal would meet parking standards. There is one space provided within the garage and there is one space provided to the front of the dwelling house, which would meet with Medway's interim parking standards for 2 spaces for a development with 3 bedrooms. There were also concerns raised regarding newts within the neighbouring properties. The location of a pond wasn't identified within these letters of representation. However, taking into consideration the proposal site currently serves as garden space for 254 Maidstone Road, and it is maintained as a garden space, it's not considered that the proposal would impact on the newt population. And lastly, as previously noted, there was a tree within the grass verge which was removed subsequently because of the previous refusal. It was considered on the previous application that the large tree that you can see shown here provided visual amenity within the street scene. After some further investigation, it was found the land was privately owned, as was the tree. However, the applicant has agreed to replanting of a tree to mitigate the loss of this large tree, and this has been secured by condition 13 as per supplementary agenda. And the proposal is recommended for approval with conditions as set out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not normally in favour of back garden developments, but looking at this particular proposal, it seems as though this particular back garden and the neighbour's back garden were not sold at the same time as the rest 20 odd years ago when Camellia Close was built. And I'm sure if the then present owners had actually acquiesced and sold their part of the back gardens, there would already be houses like this. And as they're trying to mirror the neighbours, I don't have an issue with this application at all, and I will be voting in favour of it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm on the same lines as Councillor Hackwell here. I feel that if we even if we did refuse it, I can't see the grounds that we could refuse it because the house next door is exactly the same, so it's just mirroring at the same time. So I'll be approving this.
I don't have anybody else who's indicated. Yeah.
Chairman, just if it helps Councillor Buckwell in the recommendation, I would like some delegated powers in relation to condition 13, only because having just read it, it doesn't require the tree to be retained and maintained. Oh, it's on the replacement, sorry, so we need to refer to supplementary advice on that. I know, but there's no reference to supplementary. Sorry, so I'll draw Councillor Buckwell's attention to supplementary agenda advice on that. Thank you, Carly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you again to Chantal for her report. Colleagues, I move agenda item 8, recommendation subject to conditions 1 to 13. I do indeed draw members' attention to the replacement wording for conditions, proposed conditions 2 and 13, as is set out on the supplementary agenda advice. So moved.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Those in favour?
That's 15, Chairman.
Thank you. The application for 254 Maidstone Road, Rainham is approved. On then to 1 Willow Place, High Street, Isle of Grain, and Chantal.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is 1 Willow Place, and the application is for the change of use of a C3 residential dwelling to a C2 care home facility for children. This is the site located within the rural settlement of Grain, with Grain Coastal Park to the north of the site, St James's Church and St James's Primary School to the south of the site. Just going into some photographs. So this is the property at present. The existing dwelling is a detached 5-bedroom house with 4 parking spaces to the front and garden to the rear. So those photographs just show the relationship within the street scene as it is. And this is a view of the car park adjacent to the site, which you can see is accessed immediately opposite, and Grain Coastal Park just further there. In terms of elevations, there are no proposed external changes. There aren't any elevations submitted with this application. There are also no physical internal alterations. However, this room that states games room was previously a bedroom, and the room that states office was previously a bedroom. So it's only the change of the use of the rooms in terms of internal alterations. So the use class C3B allows for up to 6 people to live together as a single house receiving care. The reason that planning permission is required in this case is that although the occupants would live as a family, the level of care required to undertake daily tasks and the level of staff required to assist in those tasks would take the proposal outside of the C3B use. So therefore it defines as a C2 use. The proposed development seeks to house 3 children with behavioural and emotional issues. There will be 3 members of staff, 1 per child, together with a manager on site during the day. There would also be 2 members of staff at night who would sleep within the staff room here. The planning statement does state that there is an internal security system, or it's proposed that there would be an internal security system that would notify members of staff in the night should a child leave their room seeking assistance. So effectively the children would be monitored 24 hours a day. Concerns were raised in terms of the level of staffing. Just to clarify the number of staff, there'll be 11 members of staff on a shift rota basis, but there would only be 4 members of staff in the day and 2 members on the night time. And that is secured within condition 3. It states that the use shall be operated in accordance with the planning statement, and that includes the number of staff present on the site. Concerns have also been raised in relation to the parking. As previously stated, there are 4 parking spaces provided within the site, and there is also the public car park which is adjacent, so any visitors could potentially use that car park. In terms of the people who occupy the dwelling, the children are proposed to be aged between 11 and 18, so it's unlikely that they themselves would have vehicles. So it's unlikely that the proposed development would go above and beyond the comings and goings of the existing use, which is a 5-bedroom dwelling house. In terms of amenity, as there's no external changes, there's no additional harm in terms of loss of outlook, impact on privacy or overshadowing to neighbours, but concerns have been raised in terms of additional noise. As previously stated, there are 4 members of staff there during the day and 2 at night time, and these are trained staff that will monitor the children. The proposed dwelling is detached, and taking into consideration the previous use as a 5-bedroom dwelling house, it is not expected that the level of noise generated by the 3 children would be considered outside that of the C3 use. Therefore, it's not considered that the proposal would cause additional impact on neighbouring amenity. Concerns have also been raised in relation to the loss of the residential house. Policy H2 relates to the retention of housing. Policy H8 relates to the change of use of properties considered too large for occupation by a single household. And policy CF2 supports the introduction of new community facilities subject to amenity, access and size of the dwelling. Whilst the proposal would result in the loss of a large single-family dwelling house, it would still reside in a residential use as the care home facility, and the proposal would provide a much-needed community facility. Just to note that there were also 3 letters of support received against this application, stating that the community facility would be welcomed addition to the area. As such, no objections or concerns are raised, and we are recommending approval as set out.
Thank you. Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Chair. I shall agree with the officer's recommendation on this. It's interesting, and I'm slightly disappointed, might I say, at some of the reasons for objection. An assumption by some people that these children are going to be antisocial or noisy, and the fact that the parish council consider it to be a loss of a family dwelling. Well, to my mind, I think, as you made clear in the presentation, it's still residential use. To me, this is still a family, albeit for some reason or another these children can't be presumably with their birth parents, but they deserve as much opportunity to live in a residential area. They've got to be somewhere. I have no idea, and slightly offended at where people think children are going to live if this is not suitable. The issues about parking and so on, I think, are trivial, and I hope that this is well managed, and whoever lives there has enjoys living in that village and will be welcomed by people there. Thank you.
Right, I have 4 members, Councillor Hall-Croft-Scott, Councillor Buckwell, and then Councillor Hackwell. Councillor Hall-Croft-Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the 70s and 80s, I was in the care system, fostered out and running away and all sorts of things which I won't care to go into. But I've been teaching since 1986, and I think we're asking the wrong questions about this. I'm troubled and concerned, and I don't want child protection to be a political matter, but I'm worried about the suitability of the location for children. These are children who are going to be traumatised. We talked about behaviour issues that they've got. Where this location is, it's miles away from anywhere. There's one bus in and there's one bus out. Children who have had childhood traumatic experiences for whatever reason, and I'm on the autistic spectrum disorder and I have ADHD as well, their personal, social and health education is so important. And for that, they need resources, a rich selection of resources to meet those young persons' needs. Now, they will want to, and, you know, I run away from Southend to see my parents in Lewisham because, you know, my foster carers wouldn't take me. And, you know, they need to see their friends, they need to go to school, and they need to be part of a community. And then when we're talking about safeguarding, you know, there's that massive Traveller All Hallows holiday park where, you know, safeguarding vulnerable children, you know, paedophiles and predators are so clever. So I would like us to consider, please, Madam Chair, sending this back for advice from our safeguarding committees, and also thinking we want the best for our children. We had an outstanding children's home at the vicarage. We then closed that down, put it out to tender, and then that got a disgusting Ofsted, and we're in a disgusting Ofsted for these, you know, we're corporate parents for vulnerable children. Now we're turning that into Eden. If we're going to provide residential, you know, home-like facilities for vulnerable children, we need to be careful of where we're locating this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Councillor Buckwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I lived in Grain for many years and chaired the parish there for even longer. I'm very interested and listen with respect to Councillor Hall-Croft-Scott's concerns, and personally I think she raises some very valid concerns. Grain is 14 miles from Strood. It is 5 miles from the nearest village of Stoke. It has very limited facilities. This is a commercial application. It will still be a residential use, but this is really a business application in relation to providing residence for children. And yeah, of course, we all want to ensure that there are appropriate places for children who require the help and support of a care home. But when you talk about Grain is the most remote part of Medway, as we all know. And that to me does in principle raise some concerns. Now, there may be nothing to do with planning law, and I'm about to ask a question in that respect. But I am very strongly supportive of the issues that Councillor Howcroft-Scott raised, and I'm very glad that she did so. So my question, Madam Chairman, because we have to deal with this quasi-judicially and on planning law basis, is whether there would be any lawful grounds, in the opinion of Chantal or David or Carly, on which basis this application could be refused. Are there grounds for refusing this application? Because if there aren't, then the hands of this committee, I think, are tied. So I'd appreciate a view on that.
Chairman, thank you very much. Very emotional statement from, and I greatly respect the comments from Councillor Howcroft-Scott, but I also understand exactly the comments from Councillor Tranter. We discussed this very carefully in the office, and respecting what Councillor Howcroft-Scott says. Grain's not in the middle of nowhere. Grain is a village. Grain is a community, and there are facilities there for families and people. And there is a junior school. I know that these are secondary school children. But the other thing is that the needs of individuals vary from individual to individual, and there are some children who need to be in quieter areas, and this is an appropriate site for that. So whilst respecting everything that's said, I don't think there are any planning reasons for refusing this application. If members have concerns, then I wouldn't refuse. If you want to go for a deferral for us to speak to our adult and social team, happy to do that. But our view in the office and my shared view is that this is an appropriate location for this use.
I have Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Chair. Not so many months ago at this planning committee, there was an application for a children's home in my own ward, which was in a terraced house, but exactly the same thing, three children living in a house. And I think I was the only person that voted against that evening. My reasons were, for clarity, it was a detached house and I was concerned about the noise to the neighbours. It was a terraced house and you all voted for it. So I don't see any objection to this. This is a large detached house and I do believe it's a good place to put children that need care. So I would be voting for this tonight.
Councillor Curry.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the comments. I've been just listening to the debate. It's quite a passionate debate in many respects because obviously we are corporate parents and on a personal level we all care. In my own ward we have an issue around the development of Russell House as a youth foyer. As councillors, both myself and Councillor Howcroft-Scott and Councillor Osborne have objected to this strongly. We've had also reports from our own experts in this, the officers dealing with children and young people, who've said it's not a suitable location for Luton. And nevertheless, on planning grounds, there is no way we can avoid having it happen, and it's actually the work has begun. So the planning system is quite robust and very insensitive to the needs of, in this instance, I think. And I do wonder why this location, why has it been chosen? I have no idea. I would love to hear the experts' view on whether this is actually suitable or not. And those experts are within the council. The children and adult services that we have can provide us that with that view. And I would feel much more comfortable having a report from them before taking this any further. So my proposal is that we defer and we have a look at this again once we've had a report back from the appropriate expert officers. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hubbard.
Yeah, just picking up what Councillor Curry has just said and what Councillor Buckle said. Grain is the most far out slung out there place in Medway. It's the furthest point away from most of the whole borough. And actually, this house is the most isolated bit of Grain itself. I don't know how many people know the area well, but there's a car park opposite for the Grain Coastal Park, which can get very busy. And there is no pavement, by the way, between this house and the church stroke school. So you have people walking on the road, in the road. So at busy times, and I've been there a couple of times when it's busy, you've got cars parked, cars trying to pass each other. And in that sense, it's not a safe location either. So I concur with views of Councillor Houser-Croft that I don't think that really is a suitable location. And I think we really need to take the views of our expert officers and remember that we are corporate parents.
Councillor Trenton.
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Chair. And I've found it very helpful, everybody's views, and I have great respect for the different views that are expressed this evening. But of course, we are a planning committee here this evening. I've dealt with many places where both children and, in fact, vulnerable adults have been housed within my own ward. And one of the most important issues when I talk to the experts, whether it's in children's or adult social care, is making sure that the right people are in the right place. That's certainly not a decision anyone on this committee is able to make, with or without any advice. I'm troubled at the thought that there are some location or this location could be considered in all circumstances being unsuitable. I really struggle with that because I should think there may well be for some children it is. So I think the point has been made, this could be an absolutely ideal location for them. But it's not for us to decide that on blanket, in my opinion. I think this is a matter for those who look after these services and those who license them and manage it and so on. I don't think we can say on blanket that this place is always unsuitable for all children in all circumstances. That would feel to me to be wrong, and I stick by the points I made at the beginning. I believe that this is potentially a place, provided, of course, the right children are there, and we're not going to be making that decision this evening. So I shall still be supporting the application. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Potter, Councillor Croser and Councillor Lamas. Councillor Potter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I think Dave put it very eloquently, actually, and I think if Leanne Farrick, our director, or Donna was here, I think they would have said exactly the same thing, that all children are different and they all have different needs. And actually, in terms of how the facility is managed and what children are placed here, that is a matter for the organisation running the care home. That is a matter for social workers and ultimately the regulator as well, as to whether this provision is right and how that provision takes shape. From the planning perspective, I'm very happy to support this application tonight. I don't have, I think it is better that it's a detached property rather than a terraced home, although I did support the care home in Parkwood. Again, providing a terraced property is managed, I think that can work as well, and that's why I supported that. But I very much support this. I could see this working, and I can, from my knowledge and experience of being a part of the children's system in Medway and having the leading role there, I could see this working for children who would be better suited to a quieter location. And actually, there are care homes that are away from any settlement, and they're managed with minibuses taking the children to places and whatever else, and that's what's right for those children at that time. But I have no qualms about supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Croser.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a matter of conscience for people, Chair, and I feel uneasy with it. based on the fact that I don't know what children are going in there. It's not so much about, you know, I think it's an ideal site for some children and it perhaps not for others. So I would support Councillor Curry's deferral for further information, whatever that may be.
Councillor Lamas.
Thank you, Chair. It's very seldom that I feel indecisive about something. I too don't feel confident enough to make a decision. This is the first time I personally have had to make a call on a property containing vulnerable adults. I've listened very carefully to the views of Councillor Holcroft-Scott and Councillor Curry, and I too would support a deferral so that I could get some kind of expert advice to advise me and alleviate any concerns that may be there. It may be the case that it's completely unfounded, but I just don't feel comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Before we go any further, I feel that there are things that I want to add. Really backing up Councillor Tranter and Councillor Potter. Sorry. I mean, the question you ask yourself: where is the right place? You say that you don't want it in a remote location, but then on the other hand, Councillor Curry has just said that in the town centre it causes problems. So, which is the right place? I appreciate that colleagues would like more information. I don't have an issue with this because I think that the information that has been given to us by the planning officer about the fact that some children flourish better in a quieter location, these children have to be looked after somewhere, and we keep turning our face against this possibility that they can live in a home-like environment rather than in a larger institution. So I understand that members would like more information, and it would seem to me that it is appropriate that this application is deferred for that information to come back to the next committee. Members need to accept the fact that, of course, we are sitting as a planning committee. We are not sitting here as corporate parents. So you do need to divorce one from the other. But having said that, the application will be deferred and it will come back to the next committee. Would you like to move that forward?
Yeah, I think Councillor Curry did. I'm very happy to second that, Madam Chairman. I think, as Councillor Croser said, and always respected Councillor Tranter's view on the legal position and duty of this committee, on sensitive applications, sensitive by way of place, geography, usage potential, where that is there and where we have an opportunity to potentially resolve those concerns, and that's what this deferral would be for, to potentially resolve concerns and get some expert views from another section of the council, albeit that the use would overlap with duties which this authority has, as Councillor Holcroft-Scott said. I think to defer, to look at all of that is simply a pragmatic, sensible, if I may say, a wise course of action for us to take for the sake of one meeting cycle. So I would second and I strongly support deferral, as you have, Madam Chairman.
Is that agreed? Thank you. That, I think, takes us to item 10. I'm going to hand it over to
can I please ask for a nomination of chairman, please?
I nominate.
Is that seconded? Thank you.
Wanting to be shut.
Okay, so we come to, oh, wait till the door's shut. So we come to agenda item 10, construction of a single-storey extension to the side and demolition of a conservatory to the side, 18 Cadnam Close, Strood. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry, Chairman. As members know, that the only reason that this is coming before committee is because the applicant is a councillor. There have been no objections to this application. So this is the application site just here. You'll see it's within a cul-de-sac. It's right on the corner just there. And you'll see that at the moment there is a conservatory to the side, which is proposed to demolish, and in its place construct a single-storey side extension just there. It doesn't cause any overshadowing, any overlooking of neighbouring properties. The windows will be, well, you'll see the elevation. So this is the property. That's a conservatory which is rightly going to be removed, as you can see, just there. And then this is the proposed property here. So you've got a utility room to the rear, bedroom to the front with a window in there, side window to a shower room just there, and then a window to the back. It's a standard design for a single-storey extension, very small in scale, doesn't cause any car parking issues, and there's no overlooking, loss of amenity or overshadowing of neighbouring property, and it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there any member? Okay, I have no comment. So in the absence of a vice chair, I move that we approve with the conditions 1 to 4 the agenda item 10 on the agenda. All in, any? Sorry, I'll leave you.
Is that seconded?
Yeah.
Thank you. Approved? 1, 2. That's 4.
Right, I'll hand it back there quickly as I can.
And with the agreement of yourself, Chairman, if we can close the meeting and stop the live streaming, that would be great.
Yep, that's it. So the meeting now is closed and the live stream can be switched off.
Lovely. Can I ask if members...